I've done a series of videos today in which I've described Ken Welch as the worst mayor the city of St. Petersburg has ever had. I've followed that up with direct information, websites, links, stories that support all this stuff. I want to share an example now. We'll call it the origin story of where I really began to see just what an awful mayor he was and really how harmful he was to the city of St. Petersburg. The origin story, if you will, of where I got really sideways with the guy. So up on screen is this church right near downtown, and it is a historically African American church. And what happens is this pastor comes to me and needs my help. Now, throughout my entire career as a lawyer, I've been blessed to see people of all walks of life. I'm not, as they say, a tall building lawyer, a marble building lawyer, where I only rub shoulders or interact with the high and mighty, the wealthy people. I'm very grateful to be part of what I've always called a street level practice. So a community leader referred this guy to me, Carl Mobley. He's the pastor of this church. And he said, Pastor, let's see if Widener can't help you at all. And the deal was, this is sort of the intersection of awful Ken Welch and the other thing that I'm very passionate about, which is the disaster that is historic preservation. But the deal was, you got this building here that's over 100 years old, and it's absolutely falling apart. While it may look okay from the outside, the reality was there's so many termites in there. If the termites let go of their hands, the entire thing would fall apart. And this guy Mobley had been trying for years to build the congregation. And one thing after the other, a congregation falling. And a big part of it was every dollar that would come in, he'd have to try and spend on this building, try and do something with it. A couple of wonky different structures on the building. There's the one section which, is somewhat historic, that back there. But then you have the other bit of it here, this newer building, which is not historic in any way, shape, or form. But the bottom line is COVID comes along and they're suffering even more than before. But here's the deal. About the time he's trying to sell this thing, he discovers that the city of St. Petersburg has smacked it with this historic preservation insanity. And the historic preservation insanity is that the building cannot be saved for any reasonable amount of money. So this guy Mobley had been begging with the city over and over again for weeks, for months, maybe even years before he came knocking on my door. And he said, Matt, I need help here. I can't afford, my congregation can't afford to keep this church up, and I can't get any assistance at all out of the city of St. Petersburg. He said, I went down there. They told me they were going to help me. I filled all this paperwork and yada, yada. And I took some time. I looked it up. And what the guy didn't know, what Mobley didn't know, was literally on that day, he was scheduled to be in front of the city on this thing called the CPPC. Now, this was, he was walking into a bloodbath. He had no idea. This poor guy had gotten suckered by the city. He had filled out this application because that's what the city told him to do. Let's go to the application. And so he was filling this application out. I'll get to it in a second. But he's walking into this ambush.
Well, I said that easy to get.
I don't know if you can hear this right here.
Here's a good pastor. Pastor Mobley said that I would go to the bank and get a loan. And then the board looked at me in the board meeting and said, who's going to pay the loan back? Just put yourself in our position today. I'm a pastor.
I'm going to drop
My
the...
concern is people, not a building.
Thank you, Pastor.
I'm going to drop this link in there. I think it's really important for people to watch the whole thing. But the bottom line is this guy was just getting absolutely ambushed walking into this thing, and he had no idea what he was walking into. Because what happens is he goes to the city. He asks them for help with his application. They helped him all right. They drafted a 100-page long dossier in which they attacked him and refused to do anything at all that he wanted or provide him any help at all. So he's walking into this meeting and he's getting absolutely decimated. He has no idea about it because he thinks the city's, quote, helping him. Here's where the Welch piece comes in. So I tried desperately to help this guy. There was lots of help that should have happened for him. The city should have stepped up, provided him some assistance. They didn't do a damn thing. They sat there and they let this guy dangle, and they let this church get taken from him, and they wouldn't help him. And I remain furious to this day. This story is back in 2021, and a reporter illustrates what the issues are. You're trying to save this historic structure or not. Mobley tells you that over and over again he tried. You see that picture there in the caution tape. There's lots of twists and turns in this thing, but the bottom line is he got screwed by the city, and he was getting screwed all the way along. I reached out to Ken Welch over and over and over again, begging him to help this constituent. Now, I got no skin in the game, got nothing at all to benefit from this at all, but I wanted to help this guy, Carl Mobley. I went through every staff at Welch. I went and knew that Welch was down south at a city county meeting or whatever, walked up to staff there because they wouldn't see anybody here, talked to them, pleaded this guy's case, asked them, please just help this guy. They wouldn't even meet with him. Welch certainly wouldn't meet with him, but neither would any of the staff. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Another example of Welch just absolutely advocating his role and responsibility. And the key element for me here is this 10th Street Church of God, this historic black church that Carl Mobley was abandoned by Ken Welch. Ken Welch refused to help him at all, refused to even give the guy the dignity of a meeting, refused to have his staff meet with this guy who was entitled to respect and dignity out of Ken Welch. He got neither. Instead, he got abandoned by a historically black church. And now comes the real kicker, the insult to injury. So the guy has to sell the building after just being backed into a corner. It ends up selling to a developer. And the developer is able to do what Welch should have helped him do all along, which is what? Destroy this unhistoric section and allow the back part of the church to survive. Welch didn't do that. His staff didn't do that. Instead, they played games behind the scenes. They pulled the rug out from underneath this guy. And that is yet another example, but a heartbreaking human example of why Welch is the worst mayor this city's ever seen. If you've got your top 10 list, this is out there as number 1 or 2 in my example. Drop in what you think are the 1 or 2 examples of why Welch is the worst mayor this city's ever seen.